I was flying back from Portland way early this morning, and I finally got to watch the replay of Texas A&M, South Carolina, because I only knew the final score. But I didn't know how it happened. And boy, oh boy, I couldn't help but as I watched South Carolina pull this game out, think back to what would it have been? Summer? When people were doing the win, loss, win, loss, in my opinion, very mindless projections for records because there's no skill in doing that, a lot of folks asked the following question about our friends there in Columbia. How in the world will Shane Beamer in South Carolina match, nay, exceed last year's win total? And the answer that I gave was not a definitive, oh, they'll do it, don't you worry, but it was, well, the way they'll do it, if it does happen, is you don't play 12 games per Saturday. You just play one of them. Same thing with Arkansas when they asked them about Pittman. You play one game per Saturday. So how could it happen? Well, now here we are in the season, and they're 5-2. How is it happening? Well, they won as a 10-point dog at Kentucky. Will Levis didn't play. They ended up winning. And then yesterday, they had A&M come into town. They were a home dog, and they ended up winning. And how'd they do it? Well, I think you saw how they did it. They had 17 points on the board. At the same time, they had 19 total yards on the stat sheet. How does that happen? Well, you have a kickoff return to open the game that basically turns Williams-Brice Stadium into a giant mosh pit. For the next 4 hours, that place was off of its rocker insane. And I have told you once, if I have told you 1,000 times, you do not turn your back on Bears. You don't turn your back on men you have wronged. You don't turn your back on the dominant turkey during mating season. And you do not turn your back on South Carolina football in the month of October. October is alive and well. One of our close, distinguished coworkers tells me Steve Wilfong just outright used the term with her today and didn't smile. So it's worked its way into the normal lexicon of society, and that's good. October's a real thing. If you don't believe me, ask the Aggies, ask the Wildcats. Imagine walking up to a swimming pool, totally full of gasoline, and there's a flamethrower over here on the lounge chair. And what do you do if you're A&M? Do you put it away thinking that could be dangerous? No. You take that thing and you pull your mask down and you let her rip. And that's exactly what happened when you gave up an opening kickoff return last night, and then you had the defensive score, and it was really over. The score does not dictate that it was over yet, but you know if you're an A&M fan, you haven't scored over 24 points in any of these meaningful games. You scored 24 last night, so you were already way behind the 8 ball. Jimbo knew it. I think the whole team knew it. A&M had 8 false starts. They played with a new center. They were down a lot of guys, okay? So that was all known, or most of that was known going into the game. But it's the, I think, worst start of their season, and it coincides with them coming off the bye week. And what had I talked about? Now we get to me personally. What I had talked about when I foolishly, albeit slightly, leaned A&M to win the game was I just kind of envisioned whatever the best version of them was going to be. I would get it out of the bye week, I hoped, and I was wrong. And so it worked out the way it worked out. I don't think that's shocking, but how bad was the outcome for A&M? Well, they had 10 more first downs. They had over 100 more total yards. They had 100 more passing yards. They outrushed South Carolina. They were equal in turnover margin, and they were +7 in time of possession, and they still lost the game because that is what hidden yardage means in a football game. I don't know if you listened to Jimbo Fisher in the postgame. I did, and I'm going to get back to Carolina in just a second, but I think that it's pretty obvious listening to him. Pre-bye week, he thought there's some things we could correct, there's some things we could fix. Now they've come out of the bye week, they lost another game. When I listen to him, I'm not going to say he sounds defeated. He sounds out of answers. He sounds like a guy who's tried everything he knows how to do, and it hasn't worked. Now, there could be two truths in the room here. It could very well be true that Jimbo Fisher has tried everything he knows how to do. What could also be true is everything that can be tried hasn't been tried yet, which leads to the multi-million-dollar question that will not be answered until after the regular season ends, and that is what kind of staff changes are you going to see there? I'm not talking about Fisher. I'm talking about, in addition to Fisher, who is added to that lineup of coaches, and is there an offensive coordinator brought in the more classical sense of what an offensive coordinator is? But this season is this season. I told you I'm not going to start compounding 20%, 30%, 40% more criticism. They just are who they are. It's a failed experiment this year. They will come woefully short of meeting any kind of preseason expectation, but that's the here and now. To me, you get through the rest of the season. I mean, they're struggling to make a bowl game now. They're below 500, so they're struggling to make a bowl game. And it's crushingly disappointing. I get all that. But to me, it's the car's totaled, okay? So you don't start looking at it every week and saying, oh, it's even more total than it was last week. Totaled is totaled. They are who they are. Did you watch Marshawn Lloyd in this game? South Carolina's got a lot to be proud of, namely the recruiting spectacle they just put forth last night. But Marshawn Lloyd, when you watch him run, he had 18 carries for 92 yards. I know that's not the biggest eye-popping stat line in the country yesterday. If you have a team that plays like him, you can win any game that you roll into town and suit up for. He's good. When he went down with injury and when he has been injured in his career, you know why they take it so hard up there, because he's really, really good. If you haven't watched the game, you don't have to watch the whole thing, but I ask you to do one thing. I ask you to turn on this replay last night, turn up the volume, and then watch that opening, and then watch when A&M's on defense. Home games in Williams-Brice Stadium are a spectacle. It's one of the most awesome and underrated environments in college football, not just the SEC, in college football. They've got something special there. They know it. Everyone's fully bought in. That place was jammed to the rafters, and everyone does their part. And that's without that team currently being in contention for the playoff and SEC championship. That's not the conversation they're in yet. I say yet because we don't know what's down the road. You certainly wouldn't expect it, but you don't know what's possible. Listen, I would not have mentioned Clemson in that conversation circa 2008 and 9. You never know what's possible. But now we look at what is possible in terms of their final schedule, and they've got 5 wins right now. They play Missouri next, then they go to Vanderbilt, then they go to Florida. 2 out of 3 there I would be happy with if I were a Carolina fan. And then they got Tennessee and at Clemson at the end of the year. They're right there on the precipice of matching or perhaps even exceeding last year's win total. And that's not somewhere we thought they'd be maybe when they started 1-2, was it? That's crazy how this game ends up playing out if you just let it play out and you don't reassess quarter to quarter. Congratulations to Shane Beamer in South Carolina. I know Jessica Jackson and those folks in the recruiting department probably had a really fun night last night too. Guys, thanks for watching Late Kick. Make sure and leave a comment. I love interacting with you. But most of all, please like the video and subscribe to the channel. That's how we keep all of this free.